This deal won't change Iran for the better. It will only change the Middle East for the worse. A deal that's supposed to prevent nuclear proliferation would instead spark a nuclear arms race in the most dangerous part of the planet. This deal won't be a farewell to arms. It would be a farewell to arms control. And the Middle East would soon be crisscrossed by nuclear tripwires.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to a joint session of Congress yesterday, making it clear that in his opinion, a nuclear deal with Iran would trigger chaos in the Middle East. We're welcoming you into Hour 2 of America's Forum with Miranda Khan, J.D. Hayworth. And Miranda, the speech, a lot of ovations in the chamber, right, but afterwards, some Democrats took strong exception to the speech.
And so did some people in Israel. They're not seeing the speech as very favorable either.
Interesting what we heard from Mike Huckabee in the first hour. Let's go in depth again on this story, the aftermath of the Netanyahu speech. Danny Ayalon, the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. and deputy foreign minister of that nation, is joining us via telephone from New York City. So Danny, your thoughts on the speech yesterday?
Well, good morning to both of you, JD and Miranda. Good to be with you again. I think the speech was really the speech of his life. Maybe it was a speech of our generation. And I know it's still divisive on political lines. We see some Democrats here. Of course, we see the opposition in Israel. But at the end of the day, I think, and it may be a little bit too premature to assess the net effect, but I think at the end of the day, it may have a very favorable effect, certainly among undecided Democrats here in Washington. And for Netanyahu's political future, I believe it will certainly not hurt him. The opposition even admitted that he is the best representative or the best speaker for Israel today, although they say he talks the talk. Now let's see if he walks the walk. But the net effect, I believe, would be favorable both for the strategic issue and also for the political interest of Netanyahu.
Danny, you say that this is the speech of his life. Can you explain what struck a chord with you?
Yes, well, why is the speech of his life? First of all, he is the one who has taken the mission to stop Iran already in 1995, 1996. First time he was prime minister, and I had then the honor to serve as his foreign policy advisor. 97, 98, he already spotted and shed a light on Iran. So he sees it as his life mission. Secondly, I think because of being so close to elections, he knows here that also political success is at stake. But what really I think was the most impressive to me was the historic analogy. And just as in 1945, the Allies did not submit concessions to Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan, they demanded and received complete surrender because you cannot really negotiate with evil. I think this was the lesson now for Iran.
What?
Yes. Well, I am not sure that the speech has moved anyone from the left-leaning bloc to the right-wing bloc. But within the right-wing bloc, I hear more and more voters that otherwise would have voted for other small parties that would now gravitate to Netanyahu and Likud. So this may further his chances to be re-elected.
But the bottom line, Danny, did he change any minds here?
Well, I hope so. I think it was very cogent. I think it was very intelligent. I don't think you can argue with the facts. And the most important thing that the administration will have to answer is why do they treat Iran with kid gloves? Iran is no match to the P5+1, to the international community and not to the United States. Why is it that they have to kind of walk on eggshells and not make demands to Iran because Iran doesn't have any other alternative? And the assumption that they will walk away from negotiations, I think, is the wrong assumption, because if they do, their economy will collapse, political chaos will ensue, and this is the last thing the Ayatollahs want. And also we have the experience that only with pressure and credible threats, they they move forward. It happened twice before, and this is the way to continue with them.
Danny Ayalon, we appreciate your comments. In fact, we appreciate them so much, we want you to stay with us through the break. More with Danny and the reaction here. And by the way, viewers at home, if you had a little problem, thanks for bearing with us. Technical difficulties are healed up. We'll be right back.
The Zionist Union has a different approach. We will protect Israel against a nuclear Iran by working together with our allies and with our best friend, the United States of America, and not against it.
The leader of the Israeli opposition, Isaac Herzog, getting ready for the election in a few weeks' time with those remarks designed really as a rebuttal to the speech before a joint session of Congress by current Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's continue our discussion now with the former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Danny Ayalon, who, of course, is on the phone in New York City. So, we heard from Mr. Herzog, and I'm very interested in what you think the polling is going to show post-speech in Israel. Danny, what's your gut feeling about all of this?
Well, JD, my gut feeling is that the speech will resonate very well among Israelis. They do understand the threat. They were very concerned about the approach that the United States and the P5 plus one are taking. And yes, everybody wants to work together, of course, with the United States and with our natural allies. But sometimes you have to call a spade and to try and convince. I fully agree that it would have been better to do everything in private communication. But if that doesn't work, I think it was quite legitimate for the Prime Minister to do what he did.
And it is worth noting, Danny, as you were offering those comments, we were taking a look at footage from New York City, from Israelis and others not appreciative or supportive of the Prime Minister's speech or his take on the issues. And the polarization of Israeli politics is something with which you are very familiar because the campaigns can get contentious. Here in this country, it is worth noting that legislative Democrats, congressional Democrats, called a press conference following Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech to offer their own responses. And John Yarmouth of Kentucky, and one of my old debating opponents on the Ways and Means Committee, Lloyd Doggett of Texas, were especially dismissive of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Let's listen to what they had to say and then get your reaction.
First, I'd like to congratulate Speaker Boehner and Prime Minister Netanyahu on a very impressive bit of political theater. Now the Prime Minister can go home to his campaign and say he lectured Congress and the American people on things that apparently we didn't know.
What do we know today that we did not know before he gave this speech? I think there's really only one thing. He is a rejectionist. There is no agreement that this administration could achieve with Iran that would be good enough for him.
So we hear that, Danny, and I know you are trained as a diplomat, but speaking as a recovering member of Congress and someone who studies our history, I don't believe there has ever been an instance where one of the major political parties in the United States has come up with a, quote, response to a visiting leader.
You're quite correct, JD, and this is quite dismaying and fortunate. It was a knee-jerk reaction. It was a political reaction. There was no talk on the substance, and I hope, and I still think this is the case, that at least the speech will get the attention back on the threat of Iran and not on the relationship between Obama and Netanyahu. There was no substantive argument against the speech or against what was said in the speech, and I think it is not true to say that Israel will be against any agreement. On the contrary, we would much appreciate an agreement, a good agreement, on any other option. But to get a good agreement, you have to put the real pressure on Iran and not tell them that negotiation is the only way, because then it would be a self-fulfilling prophecy of getting a bad agreement.
Danny, you mentioned in passing there the relationship between the president and the prime minister. I don't know if you've seen the footage from the photo op when the president called in the cameras sitting there with the new Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter, but it was pretty apparent to me that the president was very, very irritated. Now, his emotions aside, he also claimed there was nothing new in the speech. Do you agree with the president's assessment of what the prime minister put forth? We have about a minute left.
Yeah, well, this is quite a weird argument because, the prime minister is not at liberty to divulge any sensitive intelligence information, especially as he was warned by the administration. Secretary Kerry warned him last week not to reveal anything which would compromise intelligence. So what do they expect? I think he said what he had to say. I think it could not be clearer than that, and I would leave it here.
And we think also what I noted in the speech, Danny, was the fact that he did not mention specifics other than say you can Google this to check on developments and reporting of what may be going on in those talks. Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the United States. As always, Danny, we appreciate your perspective and obviously your perspective on yesterday's joint address to a joint session of Congress by the Prime Minister. Coming back with John Gizzi after this.